Is Thursday, June 4th, 6:30 p.m., June 4th, 2020, 6:30 p.m. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting. And our Vice Chair will be reading some introductory remarks.
Okay, so this meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you call in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laterzo. So members, just as a reminder, this evening, all votes will be conducted by roll call. So that means that we ask you to please say your name and then say yes or no, so it is clear for the record. Our planning board members participating remotely are myself, Anna Houston, Chair, Delisa Laterzo, Vice Chair, Mark Montanari, Clerk, and members Jerry Portante and Jeff Yates. Thank you for being here tonight, and glad to see you're well, members. So first of all, to begin, I'll review the agenda. We will first review board business, which includes the agenda, public input, updates, minutes, bills, and payroll. Then we will move on to a continued public hearing for 336 and 338 King Street, Senior Residential Development and Aquifer and Water Resource District Special Permit, Hager Homestead. After that, we will continue the public hearing for Healy Corner Definitive Open Space Subdivision. And then at 8 p.m., we will have a Littleton Station Study Area Report by Judy Barrett. So with that, is there anyone out there with any public input that is not related to the items on our agenda tonight?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right. So moving on to item 1C, board member updates and discussion of election of officers. So Ms. Laterzo, anything on MPIC or train station that you'd like to discuss?
No, the train station, we'll hear about it today or this evening, and MPIC, we have a meeting on Monday to discuss open seats. So if anybody has any good candidates, please let me know before Monday.
Thank you. Mr. Montanari, how about affordable housing and 5G?
Nothing with 5G affordable housing. We're meeting this Tuesday. Tuesday, Maren? Tuesday.
Correct.
I read the email this Tuesday.
Okay. Mr. Portante, anything on TDR 5G? Oh, you're muted, Jerry.
For TDR, I think the link to the survey is posted on the planning board website. If you go, I don't know, can we show the location? Or someone can share a screen or something? Does LCTV have to do that? Yeah?
Yeah,
You
we
don't have an
can.
image to show, Jerry.
You want me to show? I can share.
You're the boss.
Oh, all right, cool. So on the planning board website, I have the agenda up, but if you go to the planning board website here and you scroll down to transfer of development rights,
Yep, you went past it already.
did I?
Yeah, it's one of the blue boxes, blue tabs on the left near the top.
Oh, yeah, we're right by it. Yep, you're right. Transfer of development rights. And you'll see under this, there's a couple of presentations. There's hyperlinks for the presentations. And then here is the draft survey. And if you click it, it will launch the draft survey. And then you can read the pros. And then from here, you can hit
Yeah, the arrow at the bottom there will take you into the survey.
Yep, and then now you're in the survey.
So will there be a button or something on the homepage for the town?
So all right, so yeah, I mean, that's a great question where you're talking about sort of the outreach plan. I think we need to talk, I don't know if you want to do it in this meeting or another meeting, but there should be a discussion about what the framework for the outreach should be and how much resources we anticipate needing to do it. I mean, I have a couple ideas. I mean, you could scale it if you've got some literature that we can turn into flyers, that we can do physical postings around various buildings if we ever open back up for foot traffic. But you could post flyers not only on our websites but on all the town websites, and then potentially we could do like a flyer or poster campaign, or maybe even a sign campaign on the common for traffic to see and view the links. But electronically, I think if we post to most of the town websites, you should get some coverage there.
Yeah, well, Lauren, you pulled together a whole communications plan that I looked at.
Right, that's what I'm responding to. Like, how much of that do you actually want to do, or do you want to do it at scale? Like, do you want point by point, or do you want to do something that's more systemic?
Right, and along with what is it that we're going to do is who is going to be doing it. So,
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
Like, how are we staffing this?
right.
Well, I think the first thing is let's get something on the home page. I mean, surely somebody in the town government, I mean, who's getting paid to do this, can put a link up on the home page.
Right, and that's what I was saying.
Then in social media, we can go out there on our own and drive traffic to that site. But, to try and drive traffic to a site that's hidden, on the planning board page and then under projects, I mean, forget it.
Right. I'm not trying to solution right now. I'm just talking about, do we need to have a meeting to talk about this for solutioning? And then, I mean, how do you want to do this? Like, we could have a separate meeting where we talk to Maren and we talk to some other administrative folks in the town government and ask for their help. We could do it that way, and then put a scope together and come back to this board and say, this is our scope. This is what we think we should do for solutioning. This is the staffing plan, and go from there. Or we can try and solution here right now. How do you guys want to do this?
Well, I think that that depends on how long the survey is going to be up. Didn't we say it was going to be up for a month?
Yeah, if we're looking for results at the July meeting, then MAPC will need to close the survey at the end of June.
Okay. Well, because I think we had discussed real quick that we would be able to promote this at town meeting. So that's an important venue to do it. And as Lisa said, social media. But as for anything else, I would think that if you want to get yourself, Jerry, and one other person to work with Maren and work out the details, I know I'd be fine with that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for solutions that aren't manually intensive, right? things, and we've got the survey that can be tracked electronically. You can have it posted electronically. The survey is federated anyway, so it's not like location matters for being able to review the results. So no matter where you access it from, you'll be able to see the results. It's just a matter of getting exposure, right?
Yeah.
I think putting it out during the town meetings a good idea, but I don't know what other venues the town has access to post links.
I think right now, I mean, I'm just speaking from my marketing experience. I think given that we're under a tight time crunch, and that in a way virtual or social distancing is kind of helping us here in that there's really to me, I don't see a lot of rationale behind doing a print campaign or anything like that. I think to me, the most important thing is get a link, a button on the homepage, and then we can on our own start driving traffic there. To me, that's the number one thing we should be doing. So Maren, is that something you can look into and get somebody in the town, whoever works on the
I can make the request.
So who would that person be?
I can make the request
Okay.
of IT, and then IT works with, I think, with administration on those things that get posted the highest.
Should we involve the town manager at all, just to make sure we're getting the proper exposure?
Yep, I can copy Nina on that
Yeah.
communication, sure.
I think we should get this up within early next week.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to put a deadline down? Just say, hey, I don't know how quick the municipal webmaster is. Like, how hard is it to post something to a website in Littleton? Is it a linear process, or do you need to go through like a committee? Like, how do you do it?
I believe it's a linear process. It's just
if you
if
can
staff
set
is
up a
available
meeting,
to do it, then they will be able to get it done.
can you set up a meeting next week? Maybe like set up a meeting like Monday, Tuesday next week, like you, me, and whoever else from here wants to be involved, and town manager, and we can just make the request and figure out when you're doing, and then just put a target date for get it all up by Friday.
Yep, let's
Madam
start.
Chair,
Let's start with the email request and see if it requires a meeting.
Madam Chair, just quickly to interject, if you folks wanted to do a short PSA that gets posted, that could be something that could be explored. I only make that comment if it's appropriate, Ms. Toohill.
Yeah, sure. I mean, whatever help you can give. We're just trying to get the link out there, right? So wherever we can expose it, if you guys can assist in that, that'd be great too.
Okay.
So let's do that. So let's have Maren do her magic and try to get this up. And then if it's appropriate for us to meet, maybe you and Delisa, or me and you, Jerry, we can do that next week during a lunchtime or something. And then I really like Kirby's idea, because they can put something on LCTV, one of those little postcard type things where it just flashes on the screen and gives you some, the basic information. And then the rest of us can work on the social media aspect of it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Facebook Littleton places to post stuff too. That would be really effective as well. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Could we?
Let me ask one more question though. What do we think about? What's our threshold for response rate? Like, are we going to if let's say come a month from now we have 200 responses, and we only got a few responses in the last couple of days, or we got 200 in one day. Like, do we want to leave it open and get more, or like, do we have a minimum threshold for that?
That'd be a good question for Mark. They put at MAPC, they put the surveys together. I didn't talk to him about that piece of it.
Yeah, and then another piece of data that maybe Delisa or Judy know about is through past surveys, like the one that was done for the train station area, to know how many people responded to anything that was done online.
Yeah, I can, look into that, but.
Great. Well, thanks, Jerry, for working on all that.
Can we talk about town meeting, what we're going to do there, since it's coming up before next meeting?
For TDR?
Yeah. Can we have a flyer? Can we have something that flashes on the screen? That's our best shot at getting people involved in this.
Does what the LCTV doing, can that be reused for that purpose as well?
Jerry, again, through the chair, to Maren, I'm more than happy to work with her on what she feels is appropriate.
Perfect. It's all good.
Cool.
Great.
We're just here to help you.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
All right. So Jerry, you feel good about this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We'll get good coverage.
Okay, good. The last thing on this particular agenda item, so the project that I was working on, form-based code, is now Article 24. It will be it is on the warrant. So town meeting is Saturday, June 13th, and information will be available on the town website under Planning Board and then Village Common form-based code. The last thing under this particular topic to discuss is election of officers. And since we've had the postponement of town elections until June 20th, that means that our meeting after that will be July 9th. So election of new planning board officers will be that date, July 9th. That sound good?
Yes.
You skipped what is it called? The 5G.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Did you have something you wanted to?
I was going to ask Maren was, do we need to reach out to Chris to see if there's any action items for us? I mean, I haven't heard anything since the last email exchange.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything new, but I'm happy to reach out.
Cool.
Thank you. So real quick before we go on to our next item. So D is meeting minutes. Has anybody had an opportunity to look at the March 5th and April 2nd meeting minutes?
Yeah, I did. They look fine to me.
Yeah, briefly.
Okay. I had one small comment on the March 5th minutes on item 1G as in great. It talks about the meeting, or excuse me, it talks about response to letters from residents. At the end of that sentence, it says, suggested the board continue to respond to letters pertinent to planning board business. And I would recommend saying acknowledging their receipt, because as we discussed that day, we don't respond to letters. We acknowledge that we receive them though.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the April 2nd ones I'm good at. So can I have a motion on those, please?
A motion to approve the minutes with the adjustments made by Anna.
I second.
Okay. So a vote, Ms. Laterzo to accept.
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Pertante,
Yes.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Anna Houston, yes. All right, thank you. And then finally, under item 1E, bills and payroll, per my authority through election time, since our last meeting, I DocuSigned the library peer review invoice and the planning department payroll for May 18th through 31st.
Mhm.
Any questions, members, on anything related to board business?
No.
Nope. Okay. All right. So it is 6:49, and we are opening up the continued public hearing for 336 and 338 King Street, Senior Residential Development. So this hearing is scheduled for 45 minutes. How about we hear from the applicant on any updates?
Okay,
And,
so if you give me a couple minutes, we're busy promoting two panelists.
Okay.
And let's see. Hi, Bruce, have I missed anybody?
Let's see, you gotta have Doug on, please. And Sheldon.
I believe we do now. Sheldon is there. Doug is there. Yep. So Sheldon, Matthew, Diane.
And do we want Matt on or? Yep, and Matthew as well, please.
Yep, he's there.
Okay.
Great. And Courtney Semlo of Green International is joining us as well.
Could you add Renee on just in case I had technical difficulties for sharing? I don't think I will, but I'm in a remote area, so.
I don't see a Renee on the list.
Okay,
She's been promoted.
Okay,
good, yep.
great.
Lots of Hollywood squares tonight.
Wow, we have the whole team and then some.
I don't see Doug though.
He's on.
Are we waiting for someone else?
There he is.
Are we ready?
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, Madam Chair. If you are ready to begin, I'll jump right in. Well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Douglas Deshane representing the applicant. I am going to keep in line with respect to the agenda that was provided to us. So I'm going to give you a very brief update on the status of the of my discussions with town council. You'll recall that at the last meeting, we had some discussions regarding our interpretation of the bylaw and the definition of some of the unit types. And of course, that played directly into our calculation of required affordable units. So we did have some discussion about that, and there was some concern with regard to our interpretation. I subsequently met on 2 occasions, or just conferenced with town council on 2 occasions to discuss the matter. I had provided a legal memorandum to the board on my position, or to the town council on my position. And I know the town council has subsequently provided a opinion letter to the board. I guess I can say at this point that we are at least all in agreement with the application of the bylaw and what it means to us. And as a result of that, we are working to propose a revised affordable unit count and type. But given that we did just receive that letter less than 24 hours ago, I am not prepared to present to you our new proposal. But be assured it will be coming, and we believe it will be in keeping with town council's interpretation of the bylaw and its application to us. So that's where we stand on the affordable housing units. So with not wanting to delay, I guess the next topic we would talk about would be the engineering peer review status.
So, Mr. Deshane, let me just say thank you for taking a look at that again.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, so who's up next? I'm sorry.
Well,
Courtney.
I guess we're looking to get an or the board's looking for an update on the peer review status.
Correct.
So perhaps Courtney?
Well, I guess the status is we provided comments on May 21st, and we had a meeting with Bruce and the team to go over some of the comments, but we haven't received any comment responses or revised documents yet. If you want me, I can go over a couple of the comments, but we haven't gotten responses officially yet, so I don't know if you want that or not.
Well, I would say this: if there are any specific items that board members wish to discuss while we have Courtney, well, I understand we're not going to have for much longer. Let's go ahead and bring those up right now so that we can make good use of her time being here.
If I may interject, we had a pretty clear agreement of what their request for additional information is. And I think we have a good understanding between the 2 groups. We'll have responses back to them very shortly so that they'll have plenty of time to respond before the next meeting.
Yeah, and I guess I would add that there weren't any major comments. I think anything can be worked out. So there weren't any big red flags. So.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So back to Mr. Deshane and Mr. Ringwald, are there any other updates that you would like to share with us?
Yes, Madam Chair. We would like to do, I would like to give Mr. Ringwald an opportunity to just present the board a little information regarding our open space. You'll recall that, well, I'll leave it up to Bruce.
Yeah, actually, we'd like to go to Sheldon right now and let Sheldon take over for a little bit, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, so I'm going to share the screen here. So I'm assuming everyone can see the screen. Good evening. What I would like to present to you tonight is in response to our last meeting. What you're looking at here is the site plan that I used to guide you through the project in our last presentation. But one of the things that we focused on was the response made on the front building, the multi-story building along King Street. And what we have done is come up with a revised scheme that addresses, I think, what the town has been working on, which is the form-based zoning. The site plan that had been presented to you in the past and still is relevant to the project, the site plan hasn't changed, is that the parking is meeting the intent of form-based zoning by not being against the street, but predominantly at the sides, and of course some of the zone-based, the form-based zoning suggests it could be behind buildings, but as you know, we have a large green space that is the community space of the project. But the response that we are coming to you with, and we're using this tool here by putting the plan above the elevation. This is the elevation that we presented to you at the last meeting. And the concern was the length of the building as it presents itself to the street. So what we did, and I'm just going to move down now to the proposed new elevation, is that we looked at breaking the building up. And what we did is we took this portion of the building, and I'm assuming you can all see my cursor, correct?
Yep. Yes.
We took this portion of we took the building, which basically was the full length across the street, and we broke it up by pulling the L back through and creating a way to see through the building here. So it's connected at the bottom level, basically first floor down to the lower level, as you can see on the elevation, but it's open above. And what that does is it shortens the length of the building as it's perceived, breaks it up, and then takes a second volume and puts it across this connector piece. So as I described before, there's a connector from the federal building to create an entrance to the 3-story unit. Then we have another connector, and then the second volume. What this did is said, okay, we're going to create this opening, but we're also going to enclose the stair, which brings it essentially closer to the parking lot than it had been previously, which was sort of a comment from one member on the distance of the parking lot to the entry point. And as you know, there are multiple entry points to the project, but we're really addressing this particular area. What this drawing shows, and I'm going to zero in a little bit, is by projecting the plan above, it gives you a sense of, this is an elevation here, it gives you a sense how the building does play in its dimension as it sets back away from the street. So right here, what you're seeing is the plan of the federal building and how the entry point of the project steps back 17 feet from that face. So I'm using this as a datum line right here, the dotted line, and I'm showing you how the building steps and works with that. And then what happens is you go to the next piece of the volume here, and that steps back again to 20, to basically farther away from that datum line to 20 foot 7 inches. Then, of course, as you can see in the elevation here, we bring the building back forward, and we put these Juliet balconies on the street side to bring some sort of level of planting to the street. and with doors that would open up on the unit. So it's sort of bringing that life to the street. And that is basically these, you can see the balconies here and back here on that bay that projects forward. And then as I keep scrolling, we go back to the 20'7", and then the connector basically steps back to 35'7". And then the next part of the volume here comes forward to 25'5". And the idea is that we're trying to respond to what I think your form-based zoning is doing, which is to try to bring some life to the edge of the street. So buildings aren't sort of too block-like and daunting in their scale. This helps break the scale of the building down. And what I would like to do, so does that make sense to everybody, the way in which I'm showing the plan above the elevation? Does that help?
Yes.
Good. So what I would like to do also is just show you some examples of what we're looking at in terms of the way in which we're going to develop the elevations. We did a project a number of years ago at Lincoln Station. Many of you may know it. It's the Lincoln Station is where the train station comes into downtown Lincoln, Mass. And I wanted to just share with you that because I think that building, and you can see it on the screen, begins to show you how we're using connectors and overhangs and windows that sit in a wall that give shadow breaks with sort of lower scale pieces on the building. And you can sort of see here the way in which the gable end in this building is expressed with these lower pieces. And then here you can see how that connector works, which is an element we're using a lot in this design for the Middlesex community co-housing. So I think what I'd like to do is open it up to any questions that the board may have, because I know I presented a lot here in terms of the elevation, but I really hope that this tool that I presented tonight, by showing the plan and then projecting the elevation, gives you a sense of how we're trying to how we're responding to the previous comments in the meeting.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jerry.
It's still a 3-story building, right?
Correct. It's basically a 2.5-story building from the street, and the grades fall down, so it becomes 3-story at the farthest end. As you know, the main road rises up above here and is quite a bit higher than this part of the building as you pass by it. But yes, it is a 3-story building, because that's we need to be able to fit those units within that footprint.
I have a couple comments and some questions. I think this is better, reducing the length of the main building, and I think you also gain a better end unit, which was sort of in the elbow before. You also gain a way into the building that is presumably tempered or sheltered, which you didn't have before. I have a question for the chairman. In this process, do we, you showed us Lincoln Station, which is a different vocabulary than this building. Do we get to look at more detailed exteriors, or is this it in our review?
Do you want me to answer that question?
Sure.
Go ahead, Mr. Pennine.
Okay. Basically, sorry. We will draw this elevation the same way we did the others. As you know, in the previous presentation, we had quite detailed elevations. We drew this in more of a freehand style to get responses back. If this seems to be going in the right direction, then of course we will revise the elevations that we show in our main set. We'll do a more detailed set than what you're looking at here.
I mean, I'll only speak for myself, but I do think it's going in the right direction. I would suggest a few things. Number one, you should plot on a drawing the grade of the road as it meets the property along King Street. I think that would illustrate your point rather than a cursor. Second, as currently done, my other design concern is the connector between the house and the front building, and with the elevator overrun. I just, can that be done in a less obtrusive way? I mean, you're only going to the second floor, or are you going to the third floor?
We are. We're going to the.
Oh, you're going to the third floor. Okay.
Yes. And so we wanted to meet the eve of the federal building. And the other thing is, if we were using a Lula, that could be possibility, but we're really not. We have to use a full scaled elevator.
Okay.
And fit a gurney, so that pushes stuff.
I just, and I realize that that it is set back from, the front of the building. But it's jarring, your eye sort of goes to that. And I'm just suggesting it, some refinement or something. And then the other question I have is, the windows of the kitchens have been raised, the heads have been raised. And I sort of find that jarring. I don't know, it's odd.
So, yeah, we've done that because we have these higher spaces in there.
Okay.
And we wanted to obviously make the windows fit right on the counter. So people could.
Well, sure, but could you raise the heads of the doors? Could you? I mean, the doors don't have to be at the floor. These are you call them Juliet balconies. I call them French balconies, and they're not really intended to, which I think is appropriate. I think that's a great addition. Anyway, I'm just this is just neither here nor there, but that's my comment.
So the balconies are in the bedroom where we have 8-foot ceilings. So we felt that the articulation of those windows avoided the sort of static look when the windows became too much lined up at one height. That was
Plus, don't those windows isn't that on a piece of the building that juts forward a little bit?
So these windows here in kitchens.
No, they go back.
Yeah, this is back.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And this comes forward where the roof line drops in as well.
Well, maybe it's just a material change between the bed. I apologize. I'm just, saying, I mean, I want to emphasize, I think the overall organization is better. I think you need to convince us about the grade along King Street. I'd also like to see floor lines and dimensions, which will incorporate the floor to floors, because these just have to do with how tall the building is. Anyway, so those are my comments.
Yes, and we will respond to those dimensions. You can sort of see in here the floor elevation, but we will. I was really hoping that this drawing, because we didn't want to push it to the extent that we did all the other submission, I really wanted to get, and I think I have, a response from the board of whether we are moving in the right direction.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts too.
Go ahead.
I think with the way the federal building, the dimensions on the federal building, the way they're drawn, it looks so different than the rest of the building, especially with your other end. I mean, if you were dimensionally the same, if you had the same dimensions on both ends with the same roof lines, window spacing, I think it would look a little bit more aesthetic. It looks like it just evolves into a completely different building, which I think throws off your massing as well. That's where for me, visually, that's where the jarring comes from.
Okay.
It's gonna look different.
As I said before, we're trying to downplay this, and roof lines that fall back do that. If we were to take the gable end of the federal building and put it on top of this building, my eye and my experience tells me that would be a jarring, much taller building than we're showing. Because if you can imagine this surface being up here, it would be a very different scale building than what we're trying to do is make this fall away. That roof line, that hipped roof line is falling away. So the height you perceive is much lower than if we worked gable ends. And that's really our belief and why we've moved this project in this direction.
Well, I mean, to me, it feels like you're trying to protect your density. So versus aesthetics, and given the fact that we don't have 3-story buildings like this, I think I'm going to feel a little more comfortable if you maintain the character of the original Federal House, if that's what you're trying to preserve.
I think, the thing is, this stuff is so subjective. I mean, I personally think it's a big improvement over what we saw before. I think that, Sheldon, you had mentioned at one point that you were going to do a 3D model.
Yes.
Is that much further along in the process, or?
No, we will, but I think we're doing it for marketing to help the co-housing community, and based on a number of other things we had to prepare for, we really aren't prepared to show it here.
Right.
That's why we chose this method to do it. I think we've given a sense that the building has articulation across that facade, and as we discussed in the meeting, this was the method we thought would really help.
No, I think you've incorporated the form-based code, a lot of the ideas very nicely. I like as Jeff said earlier, the balcony. I like the fact that the facade now it's staggered, which I think will break it up. I was down in Westford the other day, down 110, and looking at the new condos that have gone in there next to Red Hat. They are 4 stories high. And I would urge you to go in. 3 stories is really not that tall. I know it's unusual for Littleton, but I don't have a problem with the height. Anyways, that's just my input.
So I have a quick question, because it is going to be right along the street. So how far back from the sidewalk is it? How many feet? Because as Lisa said, this isn't something we currently have here, and that perhaps could also be part of it, is just how far are we talking about?
I'm going to ask Bruce to help me because he's got the site plan, and I know where. So in other words, if we know where the existing federal building is relative to the setback line, and we can then add these dimensions that I've given that tells you just how far back. I know we're more than 50 feet, Bruce, is that correct?
Yeah, we're way more than 50. We're more than 50 feet. I'm working on bringing it up right now and getting a dimension.
And you may at the same time just look at the elevation of the road as it goes by that end, and I could draw a line on there.
Yeah, in fact, look at Bruce's picture, his background. You can see it just gives you some idea of how far away it is, but it's quite a bit. Maren and I walked the property earlier this week, and
all right, what scale are these at?
Well, we're there looking for that, Delisa. Was there anything that you wanted to share about that site walk?
I mean, it's gorgeous. I think it falls, she and I looked at, I think, is more, first of all, placement of the building, how far things were going to be off of the street, and then just the land itself. So, and I think we'll get into that with the open space discussion. But I think this would be a very nice addition to our senior housing. It certainly addresses, or certainly brings something we don't have, which are these garden level apartments.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me,
Mr. Ringwald, do you have a response yet?
Yeah, where was I measuring to? From the building to the sidewalk, the road center line? Where did you want?
To the sidewalk, yep.
To the sidewalk. 55 feet on the previous building, and now this new building has shifted back. So let me just get a real rough on here. I got it right here. The new building is at about 65, 67 feet.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Yates, I'm sorry, I think I cut you off.
Oh, we haven't talked in detail about the landscape plan, but I think there isn't much room for the trees that you've shown in front of the big building. I don't think those would be successful the way they're shown, but there should be a lot of attention paid to the screening between the parking and the sidewalk, which could make a big difference ultimately.
Do you want
Jeff,
to look at a picture on Google's got a street side view shot of the property? It's pretty good.
I can bring that up on a different background here too, because I actually have that sitting out here.
It's really good.
I think.
I got it up too if you want me to show it.
Yeah, I deleted mine.
Okay, go ahead, Jerry, and then we'll move on to the discussion about the open space, Bruce.
Sure.
So just to respond to Jeff, this is sort of the area. I got the site plan up right now,
You
and
only
this is
have-
the area.
You gotta
don't
let
have it up
me.
there yet. Sheldon, it's not up yet.
You gotta stop sharing.
Okay, I thought I was sharing the site plan. Are you bringing the site plan up, Bruce?
I was bringing up the picture.
I have the landscape plan up. Oh,
So this
Jerry's
is
got
the Google street side photo.
Yeah.
Doesn't give you the angle you were looking for from your drawing, but you're starting more from the federal house, but you can see if you want to orient, that's the upside piece you were talking about.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it's like if you overlaid, you'd have your extension here, and then this would be your end piece about like right there, right?
back closer to the federal house, I think.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
would be somewhere maybe in well, I can't, yeah, because I'm,
Somewhere over here.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the barn is being relocated, by the way. They are keeping that pretty barn.
Yeah. So I mean, you're not that close to the street,
Oh,
but it would be a much, much bigger building across that way. I mean, that'd be all building.
Yep.
Carrie,
That's
if
why
I
it's great
can,
to be able to break
grab
it
the
up.
screen for a second,
You want it back?
that'd be great.
Okay, so,
There you go.
all right. Thank you very much, Jerry, for showing us that. Mr. Ringwald, you ready to show us something next?
I am, but just in response to Jeff's questions earlier, this is the landscaping plan. And these are the trees that would be across the front. And then we have trees out by the road as well. So there'll be a fair number of trees that will be breaking up the facade, very similar to the rendering.
Yep. Thank you, Bruce.
Bruce, how many parking spaces do you have?
Excuse me?
How many parking spaces?
We have 42 parking spaces.
And they're all in that one parking lot?
Negative. We have,
Yeah, you have a little bit on the other side too.
hang on a second. So we have parking on the right and parking on the left and parking in front of the site. Based on the requirements, we need to have 41 spaces. And we provided an additional space, just it balanced out well with what we had laid out. So we have 42 spaces.
Since we're on the topic of the carports, because they are carports, right?
That's correct. There are three-sided carports. There is a siding along the roadside, along the back, and then along the far end. And they have a shed roof on them. If you want, I can bring up the elevations of them real quick.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is given that these are for seniors, and in the event that they're going to have to either shovel the snow off themselves or have somebody there who's doing the snow removal and they need to leave and the snow removal folks haven't been there yet, that's going to create some concerns for being able to dust off their car. What was the reason for not making it a garage or at least making it enclosed?
Sheldon, you want to
So yeah, so we had discussion about this within the whole group. They felt that the carports would be fine without having to make closure. You get a little more out of the space without multiple columns and doors. And the reason is that a lot of people felt that in this community, there wasn't a need to run out when there's a snowstorm. There wasn't a need to run out all the time. The cars that are under the carport, a lot of the community members talk about even sharing cars when they need to. So some of the members that don't have a carport would have their car out, but it could be if they need to get in a car that's cleared, the carports would provide it. We did do the same thing for a co-housing project in Peterborough, New Hampshire, where there's actually more snow. And we've never had an issue with those, the snow filling up the carports or, being an issue because they're deep enough. The cars get far enough back in. So we really decided that the carport was less impact than a whole series of garage doors across the front.
Okay, all righty. Bruce, do you want to go ahead and go into the open space discussion?
Sure. I gotta scramble a few pages out of the way here for my open space. So when we started the project and putting everything together, there was a lot of moving parts in the whole facility, the whole setup, and buildings were constantly shifting in size and location. And so I was trying to make certain that the project would meet with the bylaw if I eliminated this whole area, which is in white down here in the lower right corner, and just held with the 50-foot setback line to the wetlands. And what it did was we found that on a 6-acre parcel, this is actually 6.22 acres, on a 6.2-acre parcel, grab me that yield sheet, it's in the printer. On a 6.2-acre parcel, we were able to make everything work. The housing itself only needs an acre and change. I meant my calculations are. Sorry, just had to grab that. The housing area itself, the units are only required to have 2.63 acres, so that's covered within that. And then in this open space area, the light green here is the contiguous upland area. And in a 6-acre parcel, there was a smaller percentage of land that was necessary, and that's all met here. And the yellow is an upland island that is actually accessible, but it sits separate, so that wasn't counted. And that left all this area. So we knew that the whole project could move forward on a site like that. And then when we got to the point where the project was finalized as size and shapes of buildings and whatnot, at least at that a week before we submitted, I realized that with the sides over here and the common area in the center, when we made that as common open space as well, because this is the common for the property, we met all the requirements of that section of the bylaw 17348, meaning the number of units that are required, the percentage of building coverage, and the open space. And what we saw when we went out to the site, or what Maren and Delisa saw, is this. And this is the darker greens here are upland lands per the delineation with the Conservation Commission. And this trail area that comes along through here, comes back up through and up through here. These are as a trail that links through that typically the current occupants of the property mow. They only have it mowed to about in here right now. But this is all mowed around, and it's all very usable area. This is quote unquote wetland between here and here. and Delisa and Maren can attest that I'm not saying you get wet feet, because you don't get wet feet. This was all a meadow and a farmland dating back into the late 1700s. And when you have tilled up property or property that is not in a natural state, i.e. tall trees and woods, under the Wetlands Protection Act, you have to use soils to determine whether the property is wetland or not. And by augering in these areas that are very walkable and very dry, you get hydraulic soils down under the surface. And so the wetland classification on much of this property was done by hydraulic soils. So you can walk, and there's a little bridge right here that was put in over the channel that discharges from actually Long Lake area. But when you walk through here, you know, it's all up and dry. You can walk right on through. There would need to be a little crossing right here or step over the moat. But all this is all very connected, and that makes for even more upland area than what we had listed in our application. We tried to be as to the point as possible. So there is, you know, a substantial amount of upland land, and we were excited when it all worked like this way so that it could all be one parcel throughout the thing. But I think what I wanted to show with that other piece, that 6-acre parcel, is that we meet all the requirements that are necessary on less than a 6-acre parcel. We have 15 acres, and we wanted the whole thing as one unit and be able to provide this easement across as part of this as a potential connector from Castle in the Trees to the town land and the ball fields. And, you know, that's really what I wanted to show on the upland, on the open space, and that there's a lot more upland here than meets the eye.
Yeah, if I didn't know that this was classified as wetlands, I would never, I mean, walking through it, you'd never know. There are some wetter areas on, Maren, correct me too if I'm wrong here, but there's some wetter areas where Bruce delineated the channels, but it's a gorgeous meadow. And I think one of the things I love is this pathway that would be deeded, or, you know, the easement for the town, because it means that town people could walk and still have this beautiful vista to take a look at. And there's so few places in Littleton where we have big meadows like this.
I guess my question would be, is that going to be the case though year round?
What's that?
That it's going to remain walkable?
Walkable? Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. When we walked it with the Conservation Commission, it was in the, I believe in the fall when we did it. And I've been out here earlier spring than we were out here. I've been out here in all different times of the year. And Craig mows the thing and keeps it mowed all the time right now on this path all the way around. Where he gets ruts is out in the middle of this area here and up along the back over in here and back over in here. You know, he gets ruts when he mows that in wet seasons. And along this edge, it can get wet in this edge, and it can get wet along this edge where this was farmed, and there's an old farm ditch that's not as dug out as it is over here or along this edge through here, which is the actual flow through from across the street.
Can we
So
talk about how this deeded trail is going to connect to existing trails? I see the right-hand side, presumably it's where the ball field is.
That's correct.
And the left-hand, but where's the left-hand side go?
The left-hand side, okay, let me bring up an aerial that we've used in the past. The left-hand side connects to Castle in the Trees. 10 seconds here. Okay, so can you all see this now? This area right in here, where my hand's moving through, is where the trail would be, in between this hedgerow of trees. And this is Castle in the Trees over here, and the town property with some basketball courts, I guess they are. And then on the other side is the ball field. And then that connects right out of here with the trail that goes down below where the proposed library is, and it's off my screen. But those of you that have wandered, this trail goes up off the screen, and then goes to the left and goes over to the Russell Street Schools.
Okay. So I'm going to interrupt real quick. It is 7:30 and we do have another hearing that I just need to open. So that would be the continued public hearing for Healy Corner definitive open space subdivision. We'll open that and then we will resume this discussion right now and go back to Healy Corner as soon as we're done here. So I guess one of the reasons why I had a question about the open space and the wetland area is it sounds, Bruce, like what you're saying is that you reworked what you consider to be the open space, because if you kept it the other way, the calculation would show that the bylaw isn't being met, wouldn't have been met. And so in that case, technically you're going to need a waiver for that.
Negative. I meet all the requirements on that. Meet all the open space pieces. What I had done before is I hadn't taken consideration anything. I hadn't taken this area over here by where the barn is. I hadn't taken the side setback area. I hadn't taken the big common area. None of that was calculated in before because the buildings were moving around and I didn't want to constantly change the calculation every time the buildings changed. So wasn't until the building settled down and I knew where things were and I could actually have spaces, I could calculate where things are. I show in our application that we meet all the requirements. And if you take a look at the spaces that are out here, you know, we even more than meet the requirements from the intent of the bylaw.
Well, okay, so we'll take a look. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there isn't anything else, I did want to see if we had anyone out there with any public comments.
Yeah, we have John.
We have someone named Joe. I'm sorry, Kirby, I couldn't hear you.
My apologies. We have someone named John.
All right.
I think it's Mr. Leibovitz.
Okay, great.
That was interesting.
Jonathan Leibowitz, okay. If you can hear me, I can't hear you. You sound like Mickey Mouse.
Okay. So actually, Jonathan has my email address. You can always email me.
Madam Chair or Mark, would you like him muted and ask him to come back in again?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay. Do you want to proceed on with the other person? Go ahead, Brian.
We have somebody else? Okay. You can proceed, Brian. Who is this?
The name is Istein.
It's Linda Stein.
Okay, great. Thank you, Linda.
Hello, Ms. Stein. Can you please state your address for us?
Yeah, I live at 81 New Estate Road, and I'm on the Historical Commission. I'm speaking on my personal behalf tonight. The Historical Commission hasn't met yet to discuss this project, but I wanted to echo one thing that one of the planning board members said about trying to maintain the character of the original federal house. I think, you know, in the last planning board meeting, I think a couple of people mentioned that the the large apartment building looks like a hotel. And I think it still looks that way. I think the balconies help, but I think if there would be a way to match the character of the federal building better, I think it would keep with the character of the town better than it currently looks. The other thing is, it looks like we still lose that view. We're losing the view from the road completely. That's gone. Is that correct?
Sounds right.
Not entirely. We have several areas where it's still available.
Ms. Stein, were you able to hear Mr. Ringwald?
Yeah, I
Okay.
did. I think that's all I have to say at the moment.
All right. We know that Mr. Leibowitz, who was also on the Historical Commission, was trying to call in. Ms. Stein, thank you very much for your comment.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Hello, Mr. Leibowitz. Yes. Can you please state your address?
Okay, 14 Foster Street, Jonathan Leibowitz. I'm also with Linda on the Historical Commission. As Linda said, we have not been able to have a meeting on this. I wish we had been more involved from the outset because, of course, this is a very significant historical building in town. I'm just going to quote very, very briefly from the survey form that was completed some years ago regarding this building. It says it's the most among the most interesting and distinctive residences in Littleton. So it's certainly a very important building. Just briefly, I think, as Linda also said, the Historical Commission would like to have comment on this. We have not had a chance to meet. We're still, we don't have such a great administrator as Maren, so we haven't yet got around to having Zoom meetings. And I hope we will have one soon because I think we want to give our opinion on this project. Let me say first that the building has been very, very well maintained. It remains a gem of the town's architectural treasures, and we are truly grateful for the fact that it's been so well kept up for all these years, maintained and restored, I'm sure. And also I would say, you know, I am one of those who is quite happy with the idea of sensitive reuse of historic buildings for purposes other than which they were initially used. I think this is a very, very good use. And I do think that the plan that I saw tonight for the first time is certainly an improvement over the one that we saw, that I had a chance to see earlier. But I still think that the structure that we have here, the 3-story structure in an area where no building is anything close to that size, the length of it, the size of it, I think it overwhelms the initial building. And I'd really like to see if the architects couldn't figure out a way to make it fit in better with both the building as it exists and the neighborhood in general, for which, as the surveyor also said, this building would form a centerpiece for a National Register nomination or something of that sort. So I think we on the commission would like to have some input into this. I hope you will take our ideas, our thoughts into consideration. I hope we can have a meeting as soon as possible. it's not always so easy in this time when we're not all up on the latest Zoom technology. I was using it in another way before, but as you can see, even so, I'm still not. You're not seeing me, and somehow it's not working as well as it might. Anyway, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Leibowitz, and you did great. We didn't get to see you, but you did great. So thank you for your comment, and appreciate the 2 historical commission members were here to be able to provide personal comment, and look forward to hearing what else the commission has to say. So is there anyone else out there for public comment? If not, we will draw to a close here. Okay.
One else, Madam Chair.
Oh, there is one more?
No, ma'am, there's no one else.
Oh, there is no more. Okay, thank you. So I think there's been a lot of new developments. This is great to see, and especially as it relates to affordability for our seniors. So I would just like to ask the applicant to please make sure when responding in the peer review to provide as much detail as you can around your response to the questions. I know that sometimes in peer review responses, we get a very short yes, no, or agree. And it's always nice to be able to have, the reasons and the comments as to how the comment was addressed. And then we should set a date to continue this hearing. And planning board members, any further thoughts?
One thing I wrote down, it's a minor thing, but Craig has mowed the meadow for as long as he's lived there. Is there any way we can have the meadow mown? It doesn't have to be manicured, but to have the meadow mown so that it doesn't, sprout poison ivy?
Good evening. Relative to that, when I walked the property with the Conservation Commission, we had early on discussions about that point. The applicant here is very interested in maintaining the mowed paths and the mowed meadow as such. As many of you folks know, but a lot of other people don't, when you go before various conservation commissions throughout the state with a project, the wetlands always are said to be left alone. And fortunately, Littleton is taking steps right now to recognize that we have lost a lot of meadow wetlands throughout the Commonwealth. And they are working on steps right now to allow for wetlands such as this to be mowed throughout, so that we do not lose it, so that it does stay as it is. And that is part of the intent, Jeff.
Bruce, can I just add to that?
Yes, please.
Jeff, you'll see in the package there is actually a description of how we see the maintenance of that property, particularly the mowed field, for wildlife habitat. So late mowings, not early mowings, and it's in that package on our maintenance plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks. So do we have a proposed date?
I'd like to continue to your next regular scheduled meeting.
Okay, July 9th is our next regularly scheduled meeting.
You want a motion?
Yes, but I have to wait for a time from Maren because she's pulling up the schedule to tell us what the appropriate time is, because we have to provide that in.
Yeah, actually, the schedule is open for July 9th is open at the moment. What time would you like to start this one? We could start as early as 6:45.
Let's go ahead and do that. And then Mr. Yates, if you would like to provide a motion, that'd be great.
I move we continue the hearing on 336 and 338 King Street to our next scheduled meeting at 6:45, July 9th.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and a vote on the motion, Ms. Laterzo,
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante. Oh, you're muted.
Yes.
Mr. Yates.
Yes.
And Ms. Houston, yes. All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for coming in, and thank you for those changes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All righty. So for the viewing audience, we're going to switch over slate of applicants.
Okay. Okay, so we have Bruce and Sherry Gould and Town Council Chris Heap. Bruce, did I get everybody?
I think so.
Okay.
Sherry's not, do you need to accept her in? I see she's still no video, no sound. There she is.
So, and I think everybody's promoted that's supposed to be.
All right, terrific. So this is a continued public hearing for Healy Corner Definitive Open Space Subdivision, and it was opened at 7:30, and now we can resume discussion. So this hearing is scheduled for 30 minutes. So if we can please hear from the applicant about any updates, and please be brief, and then we can respond.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm just opening up the file folder here. I've got to close out the other ones so that we make space. All right, sorry about that. All right, today's date. Okay, if I may share a screen. Okay, since our last meeting, and pardon me while I find my pages here, but since our last meeting, we had a modified the density yield plan, and by way of moving lot 6 out of the back area where it was here and moving it up into the front, right up by the road. Lot 7 is in an area here where it was in the generally before, and connected these lots over in here. So what we've done is we've made it so that in the density yield plan, none of the lots have crossings into crossings of the wetlands. And the only space that we are in the 50-foot no disturb zone is this driveway corner over here between 13 and 14 as the driveway comes around the corner to gain access to lot 14 space up and above. I also submitted to the board pursuant to the zoning bylaw for the density yield, which I think is section 105A, a certificate of that all of the testing has been done throughout the property, and that all of the systems, all the lots can provide a septic system for a 4-bedroom development consistent with Title V. And that has been submitted as well. So that's relative to the yield plan. Relative to the other requests that we had, and I'm going to shrink this plan down so you can see the whole thing. But we were requested to put all of the development on one plan. And I might be able to get it a little bit better there so you can almost see the whole thing. All the development onto one plan. I also went out and survey located the trails. I went out with the property owners, the applicant, and found the trails. Oops, I need to change my backdrop because I had one of the trails in my backdrop for the previous, but I'll do that momentarily. The trail right now for John's Way comes through the field and comes down to a point here and then angles over. We just angled it around and out of here. I reduced the area of lot 15 so that the trail stays into the open space. And the trail was throughout the open space here. And here it kind of went around the edge of the wetlands. And so again, I reduced the area of lot 15 over here also and brought that down so that this trail stays. This trail kind of comes out here. This point right here is the property line on the abutters between the Littleton Conservation Trust land and that of the Peak property. And then this upland land across the back through here is a nice upland area that connects on over to the town of Littleton land over here as well. There's no trail, but it's very open throughout this whole area across the back here. And this is the area that the Littleton Trails Committee was interested in having accessibility to, so that they could make a link from the town conservation trust to the town of Littleton land. The other trail is Nellie's Path. That over here on this side comes in. This is where the driveway to, I can't remember the number. I want to say it's 269 or 269 Harwood, I believe it is. This is a cart road that comes into here and then it becomes a path. This path follows along by several ledge outcroppings that are pretty sharp and along the edge of the wetlands and comes on through. And it generally stops in this general area here. There's a gap in the stone wall where it's evidence that there used to be a trail that went over into what's the town of Littleton Town Forest. So there's that ability of making that connection. There's also just a very nice trail that comes in with the wetlands on one side, the ledge on the other, and a nice area, and that's all within the open space. These are the trails that have been used heavily in the past and not so much in the recent past. The boardwalks in a couple areas are rotted and would need to be replaced. And in a couple areas, the trails need to be cleared and more defined, but they're very much there. And when I change my backdrop here, you'll see I can't do it while I'm talking. You'll see an area that shows that in the background as well. That's very open. And Maren and Amy joined me for the site walk out there to see those areas. Those are the things that I was asked to address since when we were together last. And I think we've done that.
All right. Well, thank you. It's nice to see the big map.
You're welcome.
Members, any discussion, please?
How much open space is on the big map now? What's the total?
Numbers.
Between the
hang on a second here. The lot, let's see, the open space parcel A, the strip that is around the whole thing and where the trails are is 12.54 acres. And then the conservation areas on parcel 15, there's 14.35 adjacent to the big area in the back. And there's just shy of 2 acres, 1.9 adjacent to the area down by Nellie's Path. So that's another 16.25. So that's 28.75 acres of conservation restricted land, plus there's 3.4 acres of land that is open land here, which is parcel B, which would have the septic system for the development and the drainage basin for the development. And then all the rest of this would be natural wooded land, which is just more open space, but it's not designated open space. It's just designated as a utilitarian parcel to the open space itself, which would bring us up to, where was I before? I was at, was it 28 and 3/4? That'd bring us to 31, almost 32 acres, 33 acres of open space, wildlife habitat area on the, out of the 44 acres of the whole parcel.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, so this plan now, as I look at it, the conventional and the open space look surprisingly similar now that the houses are not in the parcel over to the left-hand side. You've put everything in the, you condensed everything over by the two roadways. I see it now, and I see not a heck of a lot difference between the 14 lot conventional and the 16 lot open space. Okay. It kind of looks the same to me now, which is, I think it's fine. You've got no wetlands crossings anymore, no issues there.
And the town gets open space.
30 acres of open space.
Right. Which we wouldn't have if we had a traditional subdivision, right?
You get nothing.
Are you conveying it to anybody?
Yes, the parcel A would be conveyed to the town or Sudbury Valley trustees, either one. We've been in conversation with them. And then parcel 15 would remain as the owner of 15, but the restriction area would be controlled under a conservation restriction, which is all of this land is striped in the vertical method.
But it would be publicly accessible.
The parcel A would be publicly accessible. The trails would be publicly accessible. Conservation area A and conservation area B on lot 15 would not necessarily be publicly available. That would be up to the future owner of lot 15.
Wait, repeat what you just said, that last part.
Certainly. So the conservation area, lot 15 is this center portion in here.
Right.
And parcel B, conservation restriction B and conservation restriction A would have conservation restriction on it. It would not be able to be developed. It wouldn't be able to be clear cut. It'd be set up in a manner to, protect the wildlife and the open space areas. But whether or not there is public accessibility to this area here and this area here is up to the owner of lot 15. Parcel A, conservation restriction C, is all of this land around the perimeter where the trails are out to Harwood Road and connecting out to Alford Trail and Dennis Circle in the parking area for this space, for this trail link here, and connecting the conservation trust to the town conservation land would be open to the public.
So why is that why is lot 15 being treated differently than parcel A?
Because lot 15 would be a private lot, very similar to the open space project that was done on Harwood Ave.
But I thought lot A was going to be, you'd be allowed to walk through it, passive recreation.
Yeah. The idea was that if the trails were there, and so what I did was I pulled the trail, I made 15 smaller so that the trails stayed on the town open space piece.
I thought, wait,
I thought A and B were supposed to be open to the public.
Yeah.
Right.
Did I totally miss something here?
This is what we've been saying from day one on this. Day
Yeah, well,
one,
that's why I brought it up. That's why I'm asking the question. To me, that's not open space.
Jerry, you made that comment before, and we responded on that before, that it is all open space. We had brought up the subdivision that was the very first open space subdivision that was done under the open space parcel.
And Gray Farm is open to the public.
Yeah.
It is now.
It always has been. It's owned by Roddy and Dickey, and it's always been open to the public. And that's how we left this parcel. It's supposed to be owned. It's going to be in private ownership, but it's going to have a conservation restriction that allows people to go through it.
Can I be recognized?
Please.
Ms. Gould, yes, you may be recognized.
Thank you, through the chair. This has been discussed all through the meetings that I've been at, is that the conservation area on lot 15 is not going to be open to the public because it is going to be open space, wildlife corridor, habitat sanctuary, preservation of the flora, the fauna. I drafted the conservation restrictions, and they are every much and every bit a restriction and a conservation grant, Jerry, as you suggested, so that it cannot be disturbed by anyone, not even the lot owner, except that it is not usable for foot traffic and passage by others. It is vistas and views. So the idea was that the ring around the property would be the connectivity for walking paths and access to the town forest and preservation of everything. And that the rest of it would be wildlife corridor, views, vistas, habitat, and undisturbed by public accessibility. Now, as a practical matter, is there going to be a policeman at the boundary line saying that, you can't step 3 feet over or into it? No, but it's not going to be area that you would invite the public to come to. They're going to be invited to go around the trails. And quite frankly, it's hard to even access a lot of that wooded area.
That was what I was going to point out. This area right here where I'm moving the cursor around is a large wetland area. There is upland island in here, substantial upland island, but this is all wet area. I've traversed it. You need rubber boots to go through. This is another upland island that's back in here. The area that is of most usable is the area that we've established for the town. And when you're walking through here, you've got conservation land on this side on the trail and conservation restricted land on this side on the trail. And it's very wide open and a very beautiful area.
Can I ask a couple of follow-up questions? Is the landowner going to be expected to maintain the land? I mean, conservation trusts exist for a reason, and they help with lot clearing when it's required. I mean, those conservation trust properties are maintained to be accessible and usable. Is that property owner how are you going to ensure the property owner ensures that piece of land is maintained in the state it's supposed to be in, that it's usable? Or that if it needs remediation, it can be remediated?
Through the chair, to answer you, Jerry, part of the conservation restriction requires that the holder of the easement, and in this instance, I'm advised by the current owner that the holder is likely going to be the Sudbury Valley trustees. They have a great interest in it, and they have a great interest in it as the privately owned piece abutting the publicly accessible piece. Sudbury Valley trustees would be the monitoring agent for that. And when you keep something for that wildlife habitat or the natural state or the preservation of vernal pools or whatever it is that you're protecting in there, according to the maps, you're not supposed to disturb or maintain, so to speak, a lot of it, except in best management practices. And yes, that's required. And the SVT oversees that, yes.
All right, so you are talking to Sudbury
Valley. Yes, sir.
And they have been out to the site and they have walked it. It's been through the first 2 phases of their review process.
All right, you might want to include that next time you.
Yeah, that would
help. I wouldn't have to ask you the question.
My apologies.
It's all right. It's late.
And those conservation restrictions deeds have been submitted. I know that it was a concern of this board that that not be the last thing done. So the first draft is circulating already.
Thank you for your response. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, so that is certainly something we'll need to take into account, is that we just received them. So we need the opportunity to be able to review them. So, because it does sound like initially it sounded like this was a departure from what we remember, which is part of why you received that response about this. So, all right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I mean, do we intend to vote on this tonight? Or do we intend to continue?
I think given the situation, we'll probably need to continue.
Madam Chair, I'd like to say that we have done everything that's been asked of us to do to be able to close this and vote on it tonight. The conservation restrictions can never be approved until the state sees them. And I'm sure Ms. Green will agree, and Ms. Toohill, who've had the experience, and town council who's here, I think, will all agree that those restrictions are not going to be approved and voted on for months and months and months. So this certainly could be closed and be subject to the conservation restrictions being in place before some target date, which Ms. Toohill referenced last time we were meeting, the decision.
I think we could close it and conditionally approve it based on town council and conservation agreeing to the restrictions. I don't see that as a.
Well, just because we received them doesn't mean that they're going to be final as submitted. So
That's correct.
we still need to review them. The sheer fact that we haven't reviewed them. So that's what I'm alluding
conditionally
to.
approve it based on the fact that town council has to agree to the conservation restriction. Leave it up like we do on most stuff we do. Anyway.
I mean, I listen, through the chair, I don't think there's a risk for closing this particular hearing based on what we know now. I don't think the board is taking a risk.
Yeah,
I think they've satisfied enough. I think the CR, and if you read the CR rules, even with the Sudbury Valley Trust, I mean, once they get on that road, there's no getting out of it. They can't turn around and not do it. So there's no risk to us in losing the open space.
Well, I want to make it very clear that whatever was submitted, because I know I have not had an opportunity to take a look, is that they still have to undergo our comment, and they might very well undergo more revisions and revisions from town council. So,
but to what end? I mean, what are you trying to achieve in doing that?
Which is what we do all along. We go back and forth.
That's fine.
Revisions on most covenants, we always do that. So it's not unheard of to close the hearing and subject to the wordage being approved by town council and conservation or the planning board, whatever. So I agree with Jerry. There's not a big risk if we do decide to close it. The conservation restrictions have even been looked at. So.
Okay. So,
and I'm not sure if you saw Chris Heaves' late email today. When I asked him this question, he's prepared to weigh in.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
yes,
Great.
go ahead.
It's not uncommon in prior decisions to impose a condition that there be a conservation restriction before some milestone, issuance of a building permit, beginning of construction, something like that. So I can certainly look at them later on. That seems okay to me. But in terms of what Sherry has submitted today, I can't comment at all on what those documents look like. I have not seen them, haven't looked at them yet. So they could be fine. They could need some substantial work. I don't know what's in them or how they've set them up. So general comment is I can look at them and work on them later on. But again, no comments on the documents themselves.
So,
Understood.
Chair, if I might ask Chris, what's the risk to us? I mean, honestly, what's at risk here? You haven't reviewed them yet, but let's say you did review them and you had some issues. I mean, if we make a conditional decision, have we lost our opportunity?
You would need to make the decision conditional upon effectively me being happy that they're fine. Your
Acceptable to the town council. That's
your condition needs to give me the leverage to make demands that Cherry cannot refuse.
So, Madam Chair, that's I would support that, what he just said.
I would too.
That's why we do it all the time.
And Madam Chair, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just, if we're going to continue this, it's more space on our calendar. It's just more time, and we're not going to get a different outcome.
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that whatever was submitted today hasn't even been reviewed. So that's something that we all have to do. Let's continue to move on, okay?
Madam Chair, we do have some hands raised.
All right, thank you for letting me know. How many hands raised?
3.
There are 3 hands raised, and one of them is the Sudbury Valley trustees.
Okay. All right, so if we can go ahead and do that.
Now there's 4.
Madam Chair, you should be able to hear the Sudbury Valley trustees now.
Hi, this is Krista Collins calling from Sudbury Valley Trustees. Can you hear me okay?
Hello. Yes, please proceed.
Thanks. So just wanted to reiterate a couple of things that I put in a letter a couple of weeks ago to the planning board, that this is a really beautiful piece of property. We are considering holding a conservation restriction. I have not seen the conservation restrictions yet, so I just want to again reiterate that I think not only does town council have to be satisfied with the terms of the CR, but we do as well if we're going to be the holder. So I'd love to see those sooner rather than later. I do think that we could probably get expedited review from the from EEA. They're turning things around pretty quickly now, working remotely still, and I think it would be important. We haven't. I get the sense that the grantee would be the current owner, but I just wanted to confirm that because I think that would be better than having the buyer, the buyer they have lined up for the lot convey the CR, and if that could be conveyed prior to construction, I think that would be good. As I said in my letter, I think the terms are really important because the publicly owned open space is such a narrow strip. What happens on that privately owned open space is really critical to the experience of people on the trail. And I do just want to add for the record that it's really unusual in my experience that open space in a subdivision like this is privately owned. I understand that there's precedent in town, and that's up to the planning board. But I would recommend that that's something that's considered. If there are bylaw amendments that open space in a subdivision such as this really should be publicly owned and accessible land. I think that's typically the spirit of most bylaws like this. So that's what I think. But anyway, I'd be happy to work with town council and the proponents to work out the terms of the CR, as soon as possible.
All right, thank you, Ms. Collins. And who is our next commentator?
Madam Chair, next will be Mark Gallagher.
All right, Mr. Gallagher.
Good evening, Madam Chair. How are you this evening?
Good, thanks.
Good. Chris Heap, I'm glad to see that you're on this call this evening. Mr. Brabowski speaks very highly of you. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks since the last meeting, I've submitted several letters to the town. The first one was on May 25th to the building inspector asking for a zoning opinion. Do you have a copy of that email, Madam Chair? Has the board had a copy?
Yes, the board received the copy. Thank you.
Okay. So normally the building inspector had been answering our questions or providing us with zoning opinions. However, he wrote to us that he would no longer be doing so, and it would now be tasked, I believe, by the planning board to provide the zoning opinion. As you'll remember, the last meeting before we broke off at a little after 10 o'clock, I said that I had several questions concerning the density yield plan. And we were focused, I'm sorry, my voice is going. We were focused that evening on lots, I believe, 13 and 14. And so my letter to the building inspector requesting a zoning opinion circles around access to 13 and 14. I think it's premature, and of course you have all of the power, to vote for conditional approval tonight when for the past 18 months, the board has allowed the applicant to continue to change his plans. And now we have dropped peer review. My understanding is that Green International is no longer being employed to review any of the plans that are being submitted by the applicant. And I would like to ask first on my May 25th, 2020 email requesting the zoning opinion, now that they're saying that the planning board is going to provide that opinion, what your opinion is on that as to the access that is proposed by by the applicant. That'd be the easiest thing to say. Would you like me to summarize my position and then you can?
No, that's fine. We received the information in a timely manner to be able to review it. So we'll take that all into consideration.
Okay. So are you going to provide me with an opinion on accessibility to that lot? Because it speaks to the number of lots that would be moved from the density yield plan over to the open space plan.
Well, I think that that's something that the board will go ahead and determine in the draft decision.
So
thank you.
I'm a little bit confused. Are you saying that the board will not provide an opinion on the zoning ordinance and as to whether those lots qualify under the density yield plan until after you close the hearing?
Anna?
Members?
Chris
Do we have any
Chris wants to
comment?
weigh in.
And
Excuse me, Jerry, hold on. Mr. Heap?
Just a general comment, and I think the board can respond or not as it seems best. But just as a practice point, I would comment that in my experience and opinion, it's the building commissioner shouldn't be issuing zoning opinions on things that the planning board needs to make decisions on under the zoning bylaw. The section that Mr. Gallagher was referencing is a finding that the planning board needs to make in evaluating the density of a project. And also in terms of issuing an opinion, these are things that go into the ultimate decision that you need to make on the special permit. I don't know that, and ordinarily a board might not get to discussion of those things until after the hearing closes and it's in its and doing its deliberations prior to issuance of a permit. So I think just as a general practice point, the planning board is under the planning board can take in information and hear from everyone who wants to speak, but it is a little bit unusual to be asked to render opinions on specific sections of the zoning bylaw before you get to your deliberations at the end of the process. I mean, all of the things that were just discussed are things that would go into a written decision at the end of the hearing process, but wouldn't necessarily be formal opinions that the board would provide in the middle. But again, that's just general comment. The board can certainly respond to or not as it seems best.
Okay. So on that same line of question, the density yield plan has been in flux for several months. The questions that the abutters have asked concern accessibility and qualification for the density yield plan. The Conservation Commission wrote a letter or an email or a review that was submitted at the last hearing. And it spoke to special permitting requirements on these lots, which would disqualify them because they are not lots that can be permitted under the density yield plan without special permits. How is the board going to answer what the number of lots are on the density yield plan? It's very clear in 173-104 how to do a density calculation, and that lots that require special permits are not to be counted. And it's usually the first step prior to moving over to an open space plan, because the density in the open space plan is derived out of the density yield plan. And as of the last two meetings, the planning board has been openly negotiating with the applicant for the number of the density in the density yield plan, but maybe not being tied to the logistics of whether they meet the criteria that are in the density calculations of 173-104.
So this evening we heard some new information, which again, the planning board members need to take into consideration.
But that doesn't refer to 173-104, Madam Chair. You discussed this evening the quality and the quantity of the open space. You talked about public access to the open space on parcels A, B, and 15. You came to a conclusion that there may be public access to some of that, but the density calculation does not speak to the quality of the open space, the amount of open space. It speaks specifically to the lots meeting the criteria of the subdivision rules and regulations. I understand that Bruce has written a letter to the board indicating that all of the lots shown on the plan meet Title V criteria except 4-bedroom septics. However, you as a board gave them specific instructions to complete the testing to meet Title V. To my knowledge, and I asked Maren this week, and so did another abutters, nothing has been turned in since April to substantiate Bruce's letter. And the letter is not signed by a PE. The letter is signed by Bruce as president of GPR. To my knowledge, Bruce is not an engineer and he's not a sanitarian. So if there is no testing to support 3 or 4 of the lots, and there are a myriad of the lots that don't meet the requirements, you had asked for and solicited an opinion from the Conservation Commission. Amy Green gave you the opinion on the lots and indicated that the myriad, several of the lots, probably 4 or 5, required special permits. That's not allowed under the density yield plan calculations. And to lot 13 and 14, you had a very robust conversation amongst all yourselves 2 meetings ago, discussing whether 13 and 14 qualify. You have riverfront issues, you have beyond riverfront, you've got—
Mr. Gallagher, can you please make your final comments, please? Start to wrap it up.
Yeah, I get the feeling I'm being railroaded tonight, and I'm not really sure if this was a setup and I'm wasting my time. But you left off last time we met, and you were going to do some more research into it for the density yield plan. There's been no discussion of the density yield plan tonight. There were robust discussions the prior 2 meetings. You've solicited professional information from your own staff, and you appear to be ignoring it and just going to give this applicant 16 lots with no basis. I don't understand the logic behind it. You have a zoning bylaw, a zoning ordinance that specifically directs how you come to the density calculation. How can you just blow me off tonight and not follow your own zoning regulations? I'm mystified. What happened?
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes,
so thank you very much for your comments this evening, for your emails. And we will definitely take everything into consideration that you have brought up this evening. And no, to your comment, I still have a few questions left.
Okay, so has the board voted on the density yield plan.
Cut him off.
in the
Mr.
density.
Gallagher, we're going to proceed, okay?
Okay.
And we have two other people who would like to ask questions. I would like to see us move on to their questions.
Okay. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. And who is next, please?
Madam Chair, next will be Don MacGyver.
Okay. And Mr. MacGyver, can I just ask that you please keep it brief? Thank you. Mr. MacGyver, there you go.
I'm muting. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're Don MacIver, 43 Foster Street. I've been reading some of the comments from other people, and I actually was surprised to see posted the one from Mark Gallagher, but also his engineer, Sue Carter, who's well respected. I share some of those same concerns. I say that as a butter. Not trying to cause barriers, but they need to be addressed. In my own letter, I plead once again that you do not close this out until you have the full details. Using the Gray Farm as the first example is not appropriate. It's much more appropriate using the more recent open space development plans. A good example, as I point out in my letter, is the Cobb open space development, where everything was figured out ahead of time. You had all the details, because once you close it, there's no way to reel it back in. And there was a trail easement, there was open space defined. It was clear who was going to get what, because the organizations have to accept that. If you say, oh, conditionally is going to pass it off, there's no guarantee that what is being proposed for the Concom, it will be accepted. There's no guarantee the Sudbury Valley trustees will find the terms and conditions appropriate. And there are good examples of that. I mean, one example was Wildflower Meadow, where Conservation Commission rejected it. The Sudbury Valley trustees rejected it. I rejected it along with my trustees, Littleton Conservation Trust. We brought in Mass Audubon, they rejected it. If you leave it half done, it's likely to cause problems. I could also point out the Bennett Orchard example, the Sanderson area, where granted it was a different, more contentious planning board, but it was left up the air as to who was going to get it. And twice the Conservation Commission requested the planning board to give it to them, and that was ignored. So, even the conservation restrictions, if you look at my letter, I address the part that seems to be a surprise to you now, that the conservation restriction C, the large part of lot 15 will be privately owned.
No,
I point out several times the Division of Conservation Services, the state office that has to approve it, may not approve that, because it is unusual having a private owner all of a sudden have a conservation restriction on it and call it open space. Now, it's been mentioned there's a precedent in town. The precedent in town is actually where I wrote conservation restrictions for Edith and Paul Smith. And that whole intent was a single owner. The intent was to turn it over to the community at large. It sort of reduced the price having conservation restriction on it. Completely different from what you have before you. And just for the trails, I've heard from butters that there's standing water and it's very hard to pass over parcel A. And it's nice to draw it on two-dimensional piece of paper, but it's quite another thing to actually walk it. You really should have a trail easement figured out ahead of time, much like in the Cobb open space development. So please read the letters. I get the feeling no one's really reading the letters submitted. There are some very real issues here.
Mr. MacGyver, I can tell you I've read your letters. You're certainly not being ignored. Sorry, Anna, through the chair.
No,
Mr. MacGyver, I agree with Ms. Laterzo. Probably some of the issue sometimes is just an issue of timing. I mean, we really do want to have documentation ahead of or in advance to us as much as humanly possible, because otherwise we're only human. We can't look at everything in the 11th hour. So thank you.
I agree. And just to summarize, have everything done and in place. Have agreed to who's going to own parcel A, and maybe it has to be modified and take part of lot 15 just so it's a usable, walkable trail. Figure out who's going to hold the CRs, and they have to agree to the terms and conditions. And also, what's typical is if you have someone who's going to maintain something, you provide some financial resources for that. And that's very common with the Cobb property, with the Bennett property. So there are some things that need to be tidied up before you have approval. Don't rush it, have everything in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIver. Really appreciate your input. And for taking the time to write the letters.
Brian Beam.
We have one more person, Brian Beam.
Mr. Beam, can you?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here.
Hi,
Can
can
you?
you please give your address?
Brian Beam, 271 Harwood Ave. I sense that we're moving toward a conditional approval of open space here, and I can't imagine how you could approve this kind of density. Basically, what we're doing is the applicant determine how many lots he needs or wants, and then backing into that number for him. Near this parcel, there's probably 300 to 400 acres of privately held open space. And I bet those landowners are salivating over this kind of density. I just can't imagine how you can justify approving this density on this property. Some land is not supposed to be built on. And it's wetland. And we have not justified the density whatsoever. And I can't imagine you could give a conditional based on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so because we haven't had an opportunity to discuss these other two items, I wanted to bring them forward. The first one is related to the notion of contribution to meeting housing need. There is a fee in lieu of, and that amount has been increased, but I wanted to make sure that the applicant is aware of that increase and is in agreement to that payment.
I believe that they're indeed aware of it. It was emailed around to all the parties, and yes, we're good.
Okay, so that amount is $385,000.
My understanding.
Okay, all right, great. And then the other topic that we had not had an opportunity to discuss on this application is the one of the traffic. We had several discussions earlier on, and I just wanted to get a sense of where we are on that. Where did we come out?
One moment here. We had submitted a plan months back, and I'm just going to bring it up here real quickly. It's shown on all of the open space exhibits and plans that we've brought forward, but hang on one second, and let me share this plan.
Because as I recall, you had conversations with the neighbors and had input to that. Is that correct?
Well, I had not had a meeting with the neighbors. I had conversations. They had sent their comments to the board. I had talked with town engineer and had the traffic engineer replied in, and we had numerous plans and discussions back and forth. And the discussion is that Tahatawan Trail, and it was agreed upon at an earlier meeting that the applicant would pay for the painting and the new signs, whereby the solid line would be rounded down to meet at perpendicular to Harwood Tahatawan intersection here, rather than coming in at the 30-degree angle. And it has space to do that and lines up with Dennis Circle as laid out. That there would be, where the current stop sign is, there would be a W31 sign, which is a stop ahead sign. And there would be a new stop. The stop sign would be relocated to the appropriate place with the stop line in place. There would be island painting done here. And then the solid line would continue on through towards this so that northbound traffic on Tehadawin Road would be able to make that turn. We also added in a stop sign and a stop line on Harwood Ave as it travels in a southeasterly direction, so that there would be a stop here. Again, Tehadawin traffic going northwest here would be able to move on through this. So this takes care of any question about the solar glare, which does occur during certain times of the year. It lines up with this, with Tehadawin Harwood Ave, and it provides an intersection across from the other intersection, as was stated, is a better scenario by the traffic engineer and agreed to by Littleton's town engineer, Chris.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
So members, do you have any questions for Mr. Ringwald this evening? No? Seeing none, so at this point then, the question is, do we continue the hearing or not?
I think we should not continue this hearing. I think we should close the hearing and deliberate and come to a decision.
I agree. I think Bruce has answered all our questions, redesigned the project. We have to decide whether the 14 lots on 43 acres is viable. That's the decision we have to make. Because once we make the decision, if they go to an open space and they can't get 16 lots, then they don't get 16 lots.
That's exactly right.
Projects in Littleton that didn't get 16 lots, that didn't get all their open space lots, they didn't work. That's entirely upon the proponent, and I don't think 14 is an unreasonable number for 43 acres, these 43 acres, and we need to deliberate that, make our findings.
But I do think we need to move to deliberation.
I do too. I agree. I think Bruce has done everything we've asked him to do. We have a new set of plans that show no wetlands crossings, that answered all the issues that were in front of conservation on the last meeting. There shouldn't be any issues. I think we close it, deliberate, and make our decision.
Ms. Laterzo. Ms. Laterzo, what are your thoughts?
I'll tell you, I'm going back and forth. It makes me nervous not having read what was submitted, and the fact that Sudbury Trust has not read what was submitted. I get, Mark and Jerry, what you're saying, but it just makes me uncomfortable. So I'm still weighing it.
Lisa, nothing's going to happen until Chris Heap, Sudbury Trust, Jerry Gould, and the planning board agree to how this land is going to be disposed of, who's going to take care of it. We don't sign anything until everybody agrees to it. So like Jerry said, we're not losing a position here. We're just moving the process forward or back or stopping whatever we're doing.
Yeah, I mean,
I do think that 14 homes on 43 acres is, I think the town is getting quite a bit here of open space, which I really like. I like it better than just going back to traditional subdivisions where we would get nothing.
Right, but this is a procedural question. The question,
I know.
Should we close and move to have a deliberative discussion where we will ultimately come to a decision? Okay. I'm not advocating a decision either way. Right. I just want to close the hearing.
Okay.
And move on. because we keep going back and forth, and we keep hearing new input, and sometimes it's new information, sometimes it isn't. There's a lot of noise going on right now, and I think we're at a point where it's been open for 18 months.
I think, all right, if you're asking for my opinion, I think that I would move to close it as well, as long as the conditions are written in there. And I mean, Chris, I'm going to rely on you to make darn sure they're written in there, that, everybody's satisfied with it. You're mute.
There could be, even if you close the public hearing tonight and vote, and I'm not suggesting you do anything, but just laying out your options. Even if you did that, you would still need to, I think, review and sign a written decision at some point. So you'd need to, ultimately, the board needs to be satisfied that the conditions we come up with are good enough for you guys. It's not my decision. It's yours.
The public hearing would be closed.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Correct.
Is what we're trying to get to.
Yes.
Right.
So at this point, then, what I would say is we close the public hearing and that we charge our town council and Maren to work on a draft decision, and we review it at a later meeting. That later meeting can be, we have one interim meeting on June 18th, or we can wait until July 9th. It's a function of how much time town council wishes to have to do an initial draft.
Well, what's Chris's position?
I think either one. I think we could, and I'll defer to a little bit to Maren on this as well, but I think we could probably have a draft decision ready for the board to look at for a meeting in 2 weeks.
That would mean having it pretty much in a week.
I don't know that I could commit to having a full-blown draft decision to the board in a week. If we need to build in time to get it in your packet and have all of you review it, then I might suggest we put it off until your first July meeting.
Let's do that.
Okay.
And maybe the applicant will take some of the input they heard from Sudbury Valley Trust in the meantime to make sure that they will accept it and you will meet our conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
So do we have a motion to close the Healy Corner hearing?
I make a motion to close the Healy Corner public hearing.
I'll second that.
All right, so voting, and just to remind the public, Mr. Yates is not a voting member for this particular application. So Ms. Laterzo,
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Yes.
Mr. Portante,
Yes.
Anna Houston, yes. All right, so then from a process standpoint, Maren, do we need anything else? Do we need a time for July 9th?
No, that's just a scheduling matter that you and I can take care of when we put the agenda together.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Good to see you guys. Thank you.
So moving on to item number 4, which is the Littleton Station Study Area Report. Judy Barrett will get teed up here. And Delisa, could you please provide an introduction? I'm going to go take a quick break. I'll be right back.
Okay, Judy, are you here? You're there? Let's wait till she gets on.
Oh, I guess I am muted. Hold on. I guess I'm not. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find the appropriate screen to share, so hold on.
So it's been a while since we've talked about Littleton Station. This is the area down near the train station and Foster Street, Taylor Street. And what we're looking at is, let's see, I guess it was about a year ago, we had public meetings and gathered input on what people would like to see in this area. And this study is a result of all of those meetings, of the surveys that we conducted, and just Judy Barrett and the landscape architecture's findings. So we finally have the final report, which I'm delighted. I know the rest of the working group is delighted as well to see this. And I guess without any further ado, Judy, why don't you get started? Because I know we're 45 minutes late here. So
That's perfectly okay. I understand. I'm on the Board of Appeals in my own town, and I know sometimes these things can take longer than we all expect. Anyway, it's nice to see all of you again. I'm going to walk through kind of a little background on this project. And
Judy, I'm sorry, can I interrupt 1 second? I would ask, as Anna has been doing throughout the this entire meeting, that you do keep it brief, stick to what's new here. And yeah, anyways, that's it.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Thank you.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview, talk a little bit about the process for the sake of people who, maybe seeing this evening who are not familiar with the project, and then sort of, cut to the chase and talk about sort of the recommendations and next steps on the project. So, why did the town do this? Because in the master plan that was completed a couple of years ago, there were 3 sort of focus areas identified as needing kind of a particular attention by the town. The first and foremost of which was Littleton Common, which I know the Master Plan Implementation Committee's been working on pretty diligently. The second area was Littleton Depot and industrial area, and the third was the train station. So the town became eligible for funding from a special grant program that was only available for 1 round from Mass Housing to kind of look at the potential for housing development around the train station. That application was approved, and here we are. So there were a number of goals that guided this project, but I think that it was really in the end to understand what the development possibilities are around the train station area from a market point of view, from a physical point of view, and to be able to think about what kinds of constraints exist that would need to be addressed, either from a regulatory perspective, infrastructure perspective, traffic perspective. What are sort of the things in the way, and what might the vision be, and how do you kind of bring those things together? So the ultimate product here is what we call a conceptual master plan for the area. I was in the lead on this project, but believe me, I didn't do all this work myself by any means. Peter Flinker from Dodson and Flinker also worked with me closely on this project. RKG Associates, which I think most of you know I used to work for, was also involved doing the kind of market assessment, the initial market assessment that was done. Fortunately, Fuss and O'Neill was also working in the town at the time on the complete streets assessment for Foster Street. So we had the benefit of being able to include them in some of the public meetings for this project, and really to help inform our thinking as well. We also received extensive assistance from the planning department and the water department and the former town administrator, and then we had a working group. So I think it really was a team effort, and I'm very grateful for all the help that we received from the town. There was a process here that really involved kind of a physical assessment of the area, much of which was Peter Flinker's responsibility as a landscape architect. We did demographic and fiscal analysis. We worked with RKG on the market study. And I think at the heart of this was really a community consultation process, because for all that we can say from a technical perspective about what the opportunities may be here, ultimately the decision is going to come down to what does the town want, and what does the planning board think it can lead in terms of a vision for this area. So the community consultation piece, in our view, really was kind of key. The study area, as you can see, it's about 263 acres. That graphic that you see here, you're going to see again, because it became the organizing principles for what became a north and south study area kind of concept, really with 495 kind of as the dividing line between north and south. So, we look at market reality and try to understand what that suggests. Because this area has kind of difficult access and limited visibility, and also a disjointed development pattern, it's got some constraints for non-residential development, especially when you consider that there are sort of better competing opportunities in other areas, both in Littleton and surrounding communities, especially when you get to thinking about retail and office space. Retail suitability, there is some here. It would be limited, it would be local, it would be neighborhood, it would be probably oriented toward commuters. Of course, in this era of COVID-19, I think we're all wondering, what does retail look like in the future? There have been some fascinating conversations about that recently, which you may have been picking up on some as well in Littleton. But what do our retail spaces look like coming out of this pandemic? So I think that whole era that we're in right now really is going to argue more for thinking about retail in small bites in this village. Warehouse distribution, there is some potential for that kind of industrial flex space sort of opportunities here, especially if there's an investment in amenities, being able to accommodate workers who might bicycle, young workers who may want the ability to get some exercise during the day. I think a lot of companies are looking at where do my workers want to be? And so to the extent that area can kind of be amenitized from a worker point of view, there may in fact be some opportunities here for logistics type of uses. And so we want to lose sight of those if what the town is looking at here is opportunities to enhance the tax base. Certainly there's opportunities for residential development. I don't think there's any question about that. The sort of targets that were talked about in the public meetings and the targets that we see from a market perspective are both for seniors, not so much the older, over 55 so-called, but really more kind of an older set whose needs are often kind of unaddressed by the over 55 market, but also young people who are just kind of priced out of the housing market, who are trying to cut into that sort of early phase in their careers. And there's not a lot available in Littleton for those households. There really isn't a lot available even in the communities around you. So, the strength here, I think, really will lead with rental development. Condos probably would be a slower absorption. There is, I think, ongoing interest in the rental community about development in the suburbs. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more down the road here. But, the challenges I think you're kind of all aware of is wastewater. To what extent is that going to lead the conversation or be addressed in some way? Providing amenities and services. I think that, at least from a planning point of view, we didn't want to leave you with a vision of this area as just a bunch of apartment developments, but rather truly a village that has a mix of uses and even a mix of housing types, a mix of opportunities that might make this an appealing area for people to live as well as to work. Thinking about the existing neighborhoods and what those folks want, because they certainly were loud and clear in the public meetings about some of their concerns about traffic and what they consider to be a relatively quiet place to live right now, and maybe not wanting it to be disturbed all that much. And then I think just this kind of ongoing, issue we had in our minds about how do you create a village here and what constitutes a village? That again, it's not just housing, it's a mix of things, and being able to create an environment that's appealing and inviting for more uses than rental apartments. So that was kind of always in our thinking here. Of course, certainly the T and other government officials are looking closely at these suburban T stations, commuter rail stations, for opportunities to build housing. As you know, I think Littleton's one of those train stations that everybody kind of has their eyes on. It's an ideal location from a variety of perspectives. So there is land there on which to build, and there's an opportunity to make a really cool village between the T station and the sort of Taylor Foster Street area. I think the question's just going to come down to how far does the town want to go to lead toward a sort of village vision in this area, and then what are going to be the best regulatory and infrastructure tools to get there. Your land use pattern, as you know, in the town right now, is mainly single family development. It's not all that well aligned with the actual household characteristics that you have emerging in your community. You have a lot of single people living alone, mainly elders, that yet all of most of your housing is kind of bigger stock. There's not much that's small. There's not a lot of opportunity in Littleton for younger workers or for that matter, older people to rent. At least at the market rate especially. And there's not much on the lower end for the homeownership market for any age group. To try to get at what the community wants, we did site visits and interviews. We looked at what's happening in some other communities. Like or not like Littleton, I think that what we were looking for was what are the sort of constraints that communities are up against to try to create housing development around their train stations, and how are they dealing with those constraints? We talked to industry people, we talked to local people, we talked to market folks, and there was the visioning process in April of last year, which was really, I think, a very telling event for us in terms of informing where we ended up with this process. Following up on the visioning meetings on Friday and Saturday, in April, we did a survey. We actually did it in 3 pieces to try to replicate the experience of the people who attended the community meetings. The visioning process was a night and a Saturday morning. These are just some images from that process. I think all of you were, or most of you were there, so this is going to be, memorable for you. We had people marking up on maps where they thought different opportunities were for preservation, for conservation, for development, for different types of development, and had people kind of go around to different tables to comment on those opportunities and to think about the ways in which development in this area not only could sort of create a physical space, but maybe address some of the social and economic needs that exist in and around the community. Understanding the assets in the area, people had lots to say in Littleton. I think one of the things that's a joy about working in your town is that there's a lot of pride there in what the community has. And so if you ask anybody in Littleton what's nice about almost any part of town, they'll tell you. And they certainly did in this case. They identified a variety of things that they care about that are assets, both from a conservation and a development point of view, as listed on this slide. We also talked about weaknesses. People are concerned about parking at the train station. None of this is new to you, I'm sure. Parking at the train station, traffic on Foster Street, which is a historic and narrow and very beautiful road, and how do you sort of accommodate development in that environment? What happens with the industrial / office buildings that are there that are kind of half empty? How do you make this more of a pedestrian environment when the reality is that right now there's no sidewalks, that the access isn't great? These are all kind of constraints and limitations, but they're not necessarily deal breakers. And the question is, how far do you want to go to try to make some of these, less of a constraint because the assets are taking the lead? We think that probably wastewater may in fact be the biggest issue to deal with, that and also, multimodal, access improvements in this area. But these other issues that are here that are listed on this slide, we don't think are particularly deal breakers. They just need to be thought through. So we heard a lot of things from people. They started to mark up maps where they thought ideas, opportunities might exist in the study area. They could see the possibility for some social benefits and economic benefits. People want things to do. If they're going to live in an area, especially around a train station, they would like some things to do before or after getting on the train. There's a neighborhood that might enjoy things to do as well. People would like more opportunities to get around without necessarily relying on a car. There are things that development can do for the town if it happens in this area, ranging from improvements to parking, to improvements to the street, to perhaps contributing housing types that currently don't exist in sufficient supply in the community, thinking about bicycle improvements. These are all things that development actually could do if the development plan for the area, for the village, is economically feasible. And that, I think, is sort of a big question. Just listening to you guys talking about the 2 projects that you had before this presentation, I just think this is an ongoing question for Littleton, is how much development, how much density, how much height, how much of development do you actually want to see? And if you want the benefits of development, you then have to be able to wrestle with how do you balance that with amount? And that's I think, a big question for when you have an opportunity to create a village. What do you want to get out of it, and how much are you willing to put into it? So, thinking about the neighborhood and the concerns they have about the peace and quiet they enjoy now, not wanting to see much more traffic on Foster Street. We think these things can be addressed in careful site planning, but they are issues and they will need to be addressed. People would like to see things to do. One of the things that people talked about at some of the tables I wandered around to was just, how do we make this a place where people want to go? And so these ideas, which may, I think, be familiar to some of you because you heard it, are things that people think might be kind of cool to have available in the train station area. People like the idea of mixed-use village with shops and services combined with recreation space and different types of housing. This was the overarching message that we heard. Transportation and mobility will continue to be issues. Fortunately, we had Fuss and O'Neill involved in this process. They were able to kind of advise some of the thinking that went into the village plan that's presented in the report. We did, as I said, the community survey over 3 weeks, tried to get input from the survey respondents to align with what we heard from people in the meetings. You've seen in the report a couple of these infographics. But actually, for the most part, the survey responses were fairly similar to what we heard in person in the meetings. So that was kind of affirming for us that there wasn't a big disconnect between the folks who participated in the meetings and the folks who did not. And of course, there were many more people who took the surveys than came to the meetings. So I think between the meetings and the survey responses, you kind of got a pretty good sense of what people would like, including the types of structures that they think that they would like to see. So when you get into thinking about what the market wants in an area like this, which is, I think, undeniably rental development, and a lot of rental development tends to be sort of bigger structures, thinking about how at the street level you get buildings that look more like this, that are more of a height that people in Littleton are used to, and allowing some more intensive development kind of back from the street is an example of a way that I think you can consider trying to capture what the market is looking for, but also get a mix of housing types in your community that you don't have now, and more development that takes advantage of this wonderful train station. So I said we'd come back to this graphic, and here we are. And Peter and I are convinced that to make a village here, it's going to take the town. And so, with that, I'd just like to point out that what we ended up doing in listening to people and just thinking about the physical layout of the space, we sort of made it into a north and south village. And they're a little bit different, as you can see from this graphic, which through different color symbols kind of tells you where housing goes at different densities and where there might be some mixed use. And there's more of kind of a mixed use node at that Taylor Foster Street intersection than perhaps up by the train station, where there's more somewhat less density, but also more of a thinking around perhaps some senior housing as you approach that life care center that's also in that same kind of neighborhood. We think that no matter what density you end up wanting to support and what regulatory tool you use to get there, that it's just important to kind of think about this as an urban design challenge, more than a density issue, more than how many public amenities do you get, but how do you get a village here? And being able to think about this, as I'm sure you guys working on the Littleton Common have had some of these conversations about how do you get a space? How do you get a place that people actually want to be in? That's an urban design question. And it's really around what's the ultimate public realm that you're looking for? How do you use solids and voids to get there? We think that's kind of the fun opportunity that the town has in shaping what this village could become. Buildings ultimately sort of frame these spaces, but you need to think about them as spaces where people will live, will their work, will their play. I hate that euphemism, but it is what it is. As I said, we divided the study area into sort of a north and south, and Peter tried to put a little more detail into some illustrations for you to get a sense of how do you align sort of somewhat larger buildings around somewhat smaller buildings? How do you cut the space up, perhaps with some shorter streets? Always, of course, paying attention to where are the buildings. And the buildings always face the street. Parking is never what dominates the view from the street. So wherever you go in this drawing or the other one, what you're seeing is the face of buildings and open space. And parking is subordinate to all of that. So as you work with developers who may be interested in doing projects in this area, I encourage you to think about how do you get a space that is a face of a building, and a variety of open spaces that encourage people to play, to linger, to socialize, and not end up with a very traditional suburban apartment development where the parking is really the dominant look. How to think about, perhaps not even requiring an oversupply of parking, but also being very conscious of parking for things like bicycles, because it's the direction that rental development, I think, is going anyway from a market perspective, even in locations like this. The south area is a busier one. It's where I had that sort of larger mixed use node. There are opportunities because of the topography here to do some more intensive housing that's not necessarily visible to the surrounding neighborhood. So this is a little more intensive development than perhaps up by the train station, but both of them have a mixed use node. This is just more mixed. Kind of what next for you folks, as I think where the fun begins. You have regulatory options for how to get to where you want to go. 40R, Chapter 40R was discussed as an option that, as I think you know, is a tool for an as-of-right kind of multifamily mixed-use development that meets certain density targets. In exchange for that zoning that meets those density targets, the town becomes eligible for cash incentive payments from the state, which in turn can be used for things like, a pedestrian accommodation or bicycle trails, things that will actually help to contribute to this village becoming a place where people want to be. So Chapter 40R is one option. And there's a sort of a first draft of what that zoning might look like in an appendix to the report. You also can do an as-of-right type of zoning for multifamily mixed use without Chapter 40R. You may not want the kind of density that Chapter 40R requires. So you can do something really kind of still as-of-right, but that would still be sort of appealing to developers from a permitting perspective, but maybe not be quite so bulky. You also can consider a tool that I would encourage you to continue to think about, which is a master plan special permit. And the advantage to a master plan special permit is that you can kind of frame what you want that space to be on a special permit level for a project that's going to build out over time. And then as each component of that project comes forward, you deal with it through site plan review. But you basically lock in the zoning for the master plan with a special permit. And it's actually a good tool for developers as well as, I think, boards, that when you don't have enough information to write an as-of-right district. No matter which of these tools you take, you're going to want to think about how are you going to review design, because without design review, that's where you run the risk of ending up with a couple of large apartment developments and not anything that really kind of hangs together from an urban design point of view. If you do go the Chapter 40R route and you become eligible for what could be a fairly significant, payment to the town, both when the zoning is passed and then later when building permits are issued, have a plan for how you're going to spend that money so that it becomes something that's beneficial to this area and helps contribute to the development of a village. Still got to deal with the issue of how's wastewater going to be addressed. Is it going to be addressed by individual development projects, or should the town be thinking about some kind of a district in this area for wastewater? Because I think you're dealing with at the Common as well. Thinking about a tool like district improvement financing, or a DIF, which allows you to identify a district where development's going to occur. And through your own bonding as a community, you can do a public investment like developing wastewater solution, and then segregate the new tax revenue that comes from development in that area to pay off that note. So DIF is an opportunity to perhaps deal with some of the infrastructure constraints that exist in this area, and not necessarily have the taxpayers be the ones that have to worry about that, or have it be such a large nut that you actually discourage development. So DIF is a good tool to consider. All of this, I think, sometimes can be a little easier than it appears, or a little bit harder than it appears, rather. I still think the ultimate question for the town is, what do you really want to have here? Luring apartment developments is easier than getting high quality development, than getting the amenities that you need and the community benefits that make a village. Housing is wonderful. It's the thing that's going to make activity happen in this area. It's what's going to bring the investment, but on its own, it doesn't necessarily make a village. Thinking about when you work with the development community, how do you get really sort of smart design? How do you get something that's compact, that isn't a sea of parking, that's sustainably designed and sustainably built? How do you build transportation alternatives into the planning for this area so that people don't all need 2 cars per unit? Thinking about how you're going to, the price points for housing. Typically communities in Massachusetts, because of Chapter 40B, think that affordability is all about housing that's affordable at or below 80% of the median for the region. But that's not necessarily the beginning and the end of the conversation about affordability. And maybe there's opportunities in this development area here to think about more tiers of affordability for a range of households, so that it's not either very wealthy and not very wealthy people, but more of a mix. Always being conscious that parking wherever possible, needs to be subordinate to the building form, to the open space. And then remembering the importance of visitability in urban and universal design. It is going to become more and more of an issue for all of our neighborhoods as the population continues to age. So you're in the driver's seat, you know, for the reasons that you know, you're still over the 10% threshold under Chapter 40B. And so you have opportunities here to get a great village and a great place that puts you on a map in a very different way than I think a lot of other suburban developments have happened in Eastern Massachusetts. I encourage you, don't lose sight of the importance of good urban design. Context matters, form of buildings matters, connectivity between spaces and activity areas, sustainability, public space, and mixed housing types are all the kind of key ingredients that make good urban design. So don't give those things up because you are in the driver's seat and in a wonderful position to be able to get them for your town. And I think that's really kind of the heart of the report. You know, you have tool options we've laid out for you. There may be others that come down the road that follow the report. You know, we laid out what seemed obvious to us. We know that there will be some Chapter 40R challenges for you. Even though you're at a transit location here, you still have to be able to certify that there's adequate infrastructure to serve the development. You can get around that, but it's just something that you need to be aware of. Knowing how to negotiate development agreements. You have a wonderful town council who knows how to do this stuff, but keeping an eye on that as well. Don't give away the store. Hold it, you know, hold it for the benefit of your town. Multifamily market remains strong, looking for suburban development opportunities. The developers recognize that they're basically almost being pushed out of the close-in communities around Boston, which have been inoculated from Chapter 40B development. So they're looking for opportunities in the suburbs. Being flexible about commercial space. There's a lot of talk going on, as I'm sure you can imagine. What is retail going to look like coming out of the pandemic? How do we have spaces at the street level that are activated that may not be traditional retail? And there are lots of discussions going on about what that looks like, from art galleries to artist live workspace. So you get a residential piece, but it's also a gallery that opens up onto a street. Being really flexible about how you activate street space will be important in any kind of planning like this, and probably even in planning the common area. Don't be afraid to work on making those non-residential spaces that you have now out there more competitive. Thinking about the workforce that would be there if you made it more of a place where people actually want to be. And just bearing in mind that whatever happens out there, it's going to be there for a long time. And so make it great. And I think with that, you know, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but that's really a thumbnail version of the report.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Members, what questions do you have for Judy tonight?
Am I muted?
No.
There you go. You're on.
I enjoyed the pep talk. Did I miss what you did for the parking at the train station?
You know, in the report, what we assumed is that that is going to get addressed by between the T and the developer who's acquiring land from the T, the developer that's going to have control of that space. We didn't get into programming the parking. We simply acknowledge that there's an issue about resident parking and it should be addressed as part of any negotiations between the town and developers. So the pep talk doesn't go that far, except to acknowledge that it's an issue.
And was there any thoughts about the concerns of the northern Foster Street traffic concerns?
Yeah, I think that that the, you know, access to Foster Street, if you look at that north, the illustration of the North Village, what Peter, I think, was trying to articulate in that image was to really sort of control where the traffic connects with Foster Street so that you don't have just a lot of traffic pouring onto the street from different places on that road, but really sort of controlled access. And also, you know, the other issue in the report that we talked about was you need to be thinking about alternative modes, types of transportation, so that everybody who lives there isn't dependent on a car.
Well, we have the train, so that's.
Of course. Well,
that's
obviously, but the train goes to Boston.
Yeah, yeah.
The issue is once you come home, what do? So there really needs to be more thought to how do you provide for alternative modes of transportation. You're not the only community with a suburban train station where that conversation is going on.
And could you summarize on the sketches the numbers of housing units that were envisioned?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Peter did not. Peter didn't count up housing units, and we actually avoided that because we were trying to make the point that it's really the urban design principles that should guide this more than a number of units.
Okay.
I can tell you that when the sketches were done, we were thinking about having a couple of nodes where you could reach 20 units an acre, because if the town wanted to do a Chapter 40R district, you have to hit that number for multifamily. But we didn't spec this for a certain number of units. It was really more a design concept.
So from a planning point of view, though, wouldn't there need to be a certain number of houses or residential units in an area to create a village?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the range of that? What's the minimum? What's the, we know we won't be going to the maximum, but I mean, we're talking.
Depends on the housing type.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to dodge your question, but a lot of it depends on the housing type. If you do a mix of multifamily and townhouse, and the ratio errs on the side of townhouses, it's going to be fewer units.
Sure.
If you want to do the smallest possible footprint, they're therefore doing more multifamily and not doing smaller, units more scattered around the site, it's going to be a different number. But I think that what you do need to know is that whether you're talking about 10 acres of that area or 200 acres of that area, you need to be thinking about, from a multifamily point of view, at least 20 units an acre.
Okay.
That I can tell you. And that's not just because of a 40R formula. It's the nature of that market. It's what do you have? Here's the dilemma. You can build a multifamily apartment building and make it work for something less than 20 units an acre, but you can't amenitize it. It's the amenities that drive the quality of the project. So in order to get the amenities built into these developments, you need to be thinking about a somewhat higher rent scheme. And that's really what's driving the density in a lot of them. And it's especially true when you get into independent living units for, say, people who are over 55. Because now you're talking about housing that has to have some type of service component in it. It's not assisted living, but it's still some type of service, and that costs money. So you're asking someone who's 60 or 65 to pay more rent to live in an independent living development than they would if they just rented apartments somewhere else. How do you justify that? You justify it with amenities.
So Judy, just because I know it's getting really late, and Maren, question for you as well. Is there, in terms of next steps, are you planning to present to the Littleton Station Working Group, or are we going to, Maren, you and I, take this back to the Littleton Station Working Group where we can really delve down into next steps?
I'm open to what you need, what you want. It's up to you folks. I mean, I'm happy to go meet with you guys again or not.
Yeah, so Jeff, just so I'm not sure you're aware that we had a Littleton Station Working Group. It's Cindy Napoli, myself, Chuck DeCoste, Maren. Who else am I missing? Ed, Mullen.
Mark.
Whatever, yeah.
Mark.
Oh yeah, Mark, how could I forget you? But anyways, I'm just, my thought is that we just received this report, that we need to look at it and talk about it as a working group. Yeah. Because I kind of feel like, okay, it's great. Now where do we go from here? Maren, what do you think? You're on mute.
That's probably better.
There you go. I'm waiting for your direction.
That's what I think we should do. I think we need to sit down again as a group and discuss this and talk about next steps.
I would agree. I mean, being able to have some direction, recommendations from the working group, because you all know this at a deeper level than the rest of us, and then come back to the entire planning board with those thoughts. That would be great, Delisa.
So Lauren, what I would suggest is that we schedule it for after the town meeting, because I know people are just crazy with that. So maybe July, or do you want me to reach out to other people in the group and see how they feel?
Let me know what you want me to help you with.
Okay. Then what I propose is I reach out to some of the other members of the working group and get their input, and we'll just take it from there. And then we'll be in touch with you, Judy.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think an early first step would be to have some consultation with Mass Development, which is the agency that funds district feasibility studies. Because I'm almost convinced that in order to be able to deal with some of the constraints in this area, you're talking about some physical improvements. And I think you're going to be needing to talk about ways to finance that. So I would consider asking Mass Development to give you some technical assistance. They usually will send a consultant out who does diff studies like this, someone like Camoin Associates, to really kind of look at sort of what's the situation here and how much revenue would you need to generate in order to support a certain amount of debt. I think it would be important. Huh?
Okay. Thank you for that.
Terrific. Any other questions? Mark?
No, I'm good. I think we should have a meeting in August, September, whatever, whenever we can get one.
Okay. So I'll say August or September for you, but I'll contact the other people as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want this, September seems kind of late to me. I want to make sure we continue the momentum, but I know it's summer and maybe we'll actually get outside.
I think one of the key questions for the working group is how soon, based on the original thinking, would you like to be able to perhaps do the foundational things like change zoning? Because as you know, that takes so long. So that would be a great question to discuss with the working group.
It's a springtime meeting of next year at the earliest. Right, about a year.
Yeah.
It won't be ready for fall.
No, I can't. No, it won't be ready for fall, but I would definitely like to see it ready by spring.
A year from now.
Why not? All right.
Okay. We thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
We do have one question. Oh,
Sorry, my mistake. Do we have any public comment this evening on the presentation? Oh, we do. We have Mr. Zeldin on the line.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Hi, Judy.
Just for the record, please give your address.
Sure. It's Mike Zeldin, 11 Loann Street. I really appreciate the effort all of you put in. Judy and your team has done a great job, and it looks like the working group has done an outstanding job in making sure that something useful comes out of this. Just one suggestion. You have the time. My suggestion is that you reach out now and let the world of development know that you're going down the path of taking the station area seriously. Mass Development is aware of this area. They've already been approached by one or more of the property owners. I believe there are 40 of them, if I'm not mistaken, the number of pieces that you've got. But one of the larger ones is definitely looking. And it might be interesting to see if you brought developers into, shall we say, the conversation, even on the sideline, to begin understanding how the market might evolve. This might be too early for them because of the economic conditions that you're looking at, but then again, you may find some interesting perspectives about what they are envisioning for the future, especially when it comes to alternative modes of transportation and new technologies that are slowly entering the construction industry. And that's all I have to offer for you at this point. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Maureen, anyone else?
Nobody else has their hand raised.
Okay. Thanks again, Judy.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Stay safe.
All right, so members, that was the last item on our agenda. Is there anything else before we adjourn?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, so just as a reminder, next meeting is going to be on Thursday, June 18th for TDR. And as I understand it, we might have a couple of A&Rs. And then the following meeting after that is July 9th. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
A second?
All right, so all in favor, Ms. Laterzo,
Yes.
Mr. Montanari,
Aye.
Mr. Yates,
Yes.
Annie Houston. Yes. Thank you, Maren, for all your help as always.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night, everyone.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.